Financial Freedom Guide, Sustainable Wealth Through Real Estate Investment. Have you ever wondered, why do some people get rich on the same income, while others end up back at zero every month? Or why do some build wealth through real estate investment, while others are crushed under debt? The problem isn't the amount of money. It's hidden in the mind that manages it. This book will show you not just how to invest, but how wealth is truly attained. Because financial freedom isn't something achieved overnight. It's a way of life. There are no get-rich-quick promises here, no one-click fortune fantasies. Instead, you'll find strategies that are tested in the real world, sustainable, and practical. The Financial Freedom Guide offers an in-depth journey from the strategies Ken Mroy followed to build a $2 billion real estate empire with zero capital, to Peter A. Saul's principles of financial independence, Monish Pabrai's discipline of patience that has paid off for investors, to practical cash flow methods. This book is a guide for anyone who wants to learn how to make money work for them. So, what awaits you in these pages? What is true financial freedom, and how is it measured? Why is real estate investment the most powerful tool for sustainable wealth? How can you achieve financial freedom with the trio of knowledge, strategy, and patience? How can you create leverage by wisely using other people's money? And most importantly, how do you initiate your mental transformation? This book doesn't just talk about investing. It frees you from your misconceptions about money. It teaches you how to manage your budget, grow your income systematically, and use debt not as a trap, but as a tool.
Real estate investment is the vehicle for this journey, and financial freedom is the destination. If you're ready, let's embark on this journey together, because freedom isn't a goal, it's a way of life built with a strategy. And this book is the map to that strategy. Mental transformation, understanding the idea of financial freedom. True financial freedom begins not with the numbers in your bank account, but with your mindset. Many people confuse being rich with financial independence, but money is not freedom itself. It is merely the tool you use to create it. Financial freedom is less about how much money you have and more about how much control you have over your money. The investment strategies discussed in this book aim not only to accumulate wealth, but also to gain the power to be free. Because true wealth is this: being able to choose to work even when you don't have to. This awareness shifts you from a consumer mindset to a producer mindset. You no longer sell your time for money. You use your time to create value instead of earning money. Financial freedom is the freedom of the person who manages money. For most people, this concept seems abstract, because in school or at work, we are taught not money management, but only how to earn money. The result? Fear, impatience, and false beliefs govern people's financial decisions. Fear prevents them from investing. Impatience entraps them in the pursuit of short-term gains. False beliefs, on the other hand, as if I'm not good enough for financial freedom, trap you in that mindset. But financial freedom is possible for everyone, because what matters is not your starting point, it's your perspective. What Ken Mroy used to build a real estate empire with zero capital was not money, it was strategic thinking. As Peter A. Saul teaches, financial independence is not a mathematical calculation, it is a behavior pattern. The power of compound interest shows how patience transforms into wealth over time. As Monish Pabrai says, big returns come from few but right decisions. Mental transformation is the foundation of financial freedom, because all decisions start there. If you see money as a source of stress, you avoid it. But if you see it as a tool, you work with it. That's why the first step is to internalize the belief that money is under my control. When setting financial goals, many people ask, how much do I want to earn? But the real question is, how do I want to live? Because freedom is the ability to build the life you want. Money merely supports this life. It does not define it. Once you make this mental shift, every decision you make will be different. When evaluating your spending, you won't ask, can I afford this? But rather, does this expense serve my freedom? When choosing your investments, you won't ask, where will I get the highest return? But rather, which strategy will lead me to financial freedom in the long term? Financial freedom is not an end, it's a journey. And the most important thing you'll gain on this journey is not money, but the sense of control over your own life. That's why today, tell yourself this. Today, I'm making a decision. Money won't control me, I will control money. Because this decision is the first step that will free you not only financially, but emotionally as well. And remember, everything starts with this mental shift. Story. If your mind changes, everything changes. On a hot Arizona morning, Michael Turner was sipping his coffee at the small kitchen table. In front of him was a pile of credit card statements, and tucked away was a small note. One day, I will be financially free. Michael was in his late 30s. He had a good job. He thought he earned well, but at the end of the month, he was always left with the same thing: stress, no matter how hard he worked. It was as if financial freedom was always one step ahead of him. Over time, this routine got a name: the treadmill life. One day after work, while stuck in traffic, a podcast on the radio caught his attention. A man was talking about seeing money as a tool for freedom. Financial freedom isn't about being rich, the voice said. It's about having choices. It's about gaining control, not fear. That night, when Michael got home, for the first time in a long while, he thought quietly, am I truly free? His own answer startled him, because he had confused freedom with wealth. He was earning more than ever before, but he never felt truly free. The next morning, before going to work, he wrote a new sentence on the back of his notebook: I will not let money control me. That sentence, it was the first real investment in his life. Michael started listening to financial literacy books on his commute to work. The first thing he learned was this: financial freedom is not a math problem, it's a mental model. When money is managed with emotional decisions, fear grows, but when managed with knowledge, it gains power. As a first step, he analyzed his spending. Every month, small but unnecessary expenses kept him in a debt spiral without him noticing. He closed his credit cards. He canceled unnecessary subscriptions. And after a few weeks, he realized the first taste of freedom is not in the money you earn, but in the feeling of control. Months passed. Michael was now researching investing. One evening on YouTube, he came across Ken Mroy's talk titled Cash Flow in Real Estate. Wealth, Ken said, isn't in the value of a property. It's hidden in the options it provides you. This sentence resonated in Michael's mind. With his small savings, he enrolled in a low-budget real estate investment course. He soon realized what had truly changed wasn't the balance in his bank account. It was his perspective on himself. He no longer said, I don't have enough money. He began thinking, how can I manage my money? He wasn't afraid of his debts. He was reducing them with a planned strategy. As he took small steps, he realized financial freedom is built not with numbers, but with determination. A year later, Michael made his first investment,
a small studio apartment. The rent was modest, but that rent represented one thing each month: the power of his own decision. One evening, sitting in that same kitchen, he looked at his first note again. "One day I will be free." He smiled beneath it and added a new line. "Today is that day, because now I manage money, not the other way around." Michael's wealth was still limited, but his mind was now free. And in that moment, he understood. Financial freedom doesn't begin with the amount of dollars. It begins with a mental transformation. The real starting point: understand your financial situation. The stronger the foundation of a building, the longer that building will last. Financial freedom works on the same principle. If the foundation isn't solid, no investment strategy will set you free. The real starting point is not "how much do I want?" but "where am I right now?" Because financial success begins not only with earning, but with knowing where you stand. That's why the first step is an act of honesty, looking at your own financial situation in the mirror.
Many people skip this step before even starting to talk about investing. They make a financial freedom plan without fully knowing their credit card debt, income-expense balance, assets, and liabilities. But you can't manage what you can't measure. Trying to build wealth without taking your financial picture is like trying to find your way in the dark. Net worth. Seeing the truth. Net worth is the X-ray of your financial life. Take your assets, what you own, and subtract your debts. The remaining amount is your wealth today, your true situation. This number does not define you. It simply maps your path. As Ken Mroy says, you may start with zero money, but your strategy cannot be zero. Knowing your net worth gives you the courage to take action without shame or fear. Cash flow, the pulse of freedom. Many people take pride in their income but are unaware of their expenses. Yet the true indicator of financial freedom is cash flow. That is, the amount left in your pocket each month. Positive cash flow is the gateway to freedom. Negative cash flow, on the other hand, enslaves you to debt. As Peter A. Saul emphasizes, financial analysis is difficult but necessary. Without knowing the truth, you cannot manage the future. Budget, not a restriction, but a freedom plan. The word budget evokes feelings of prohibition, restriction, and constraint in most people. But correctly defined, a budget is a freedom plan. Every expense is a choice. Budgeting allows you to make these choices consciously. Conscious spending means living according to your values. That's why a budget doesn't limit you, it empowers you with a sense of control. Debt management, breaking the chains. Debt is a chain that binds you to the choices you made in the past.
But when managed correctly, this chain becomes a bridge. Manage your debts not with fear, but with strategy. Choose either the debt avalanche or debt spiral method. Start with high-interest debt. But most importantly, don't hide your debts. Knowing them doesn't make you weak. It makes you aware. Financial freedom comes from objectively seeing your income, expenses, debts, and assets before investing. So you start planning not just your money, but your future too. Today, give yourself a task at the end of this page. Take a piece of paper and write. How much money do you have in the bank? How much debt do you have? How much money comes into your pocket each month? And how much goes out? This isn't an investment. It's an awareness exercise. But this exercise gives you something that will make you richer than any investment. Financial freedom. Remember, freedom begins with knowing. Make a decision today. I will take a piece of paper and draw the true picture of my wealth. This drawing is your roadmap, and every financial success begins on that page. Story: Seeing the truth. In a quiet suburb of New Jersey, Michael Turner was a 38-year-old sales manager. Every morning before going to work, he repeated the same routine. He would stop by the coffee chain on the corner, buy his $8 latte, and after spending half an hour in traffic, he would arrive at his office. His income wasn't bad, but at the end of the month, he always faced the same picture. His wallet was empty, his stress levels high, and every time he would say the same thing to himself. If I earned a little more, everything would be fine. But no matter how much more he earned, nothing changed.
His credit card debt was growing, his car payments were late, and his anxiety was increasing. Investment, savings, financial freedom. These were always other people's words. There was no place for these concepts in his own life. One evening, watching television, an investor said, "Freedom begins not with profit, but with awareness. You can never move forward without taking a financial snapshot." These words echoed in his ears, but the voice of defense inside him immediately kicked in. "I'm not that much in debt, it's just a temporary period." He couldn't sleep that night. He grabbed the notebook and pen by his bedside, and perhaps for the first time in his life, he was completely honest with himself. Bank account balance, $1,240. Credit card debt, $12,600. Monthly income, $5,200. Monthly expenses, $5,450. His hands were shaking when he put down the pen. For the first time, he faced the financial reality of his life. He didn't get angry at himself, but he felt ashamed. He murmured quietly, "I'm not managing money. Money is managing me." The next morning, he made his coffee at home. Instead of taking the car, he took the bus. When he got home that evening, he found a simple budget spreadsheet online. And for the first time, the word budget felt like a plan for freedom, not a restriction. As he wrote down his expenses one by one, he realized the little things he spent money on each month were actually equivalent to an investment opportunity. A week later, he listed his credit card debts by interest rate. He decided to start paying off the highest one first. Small steps brought small victories. By the end of the first month, he had an extra $500 in his account. This wasn't just money to him, it was a turning point. He wrote in his notebook, "Today my financial freedom didn't begin, but today my awareness began." As the months passed, Michael began to change. His view of money was no longer emotional, but strategic. As he updated his financial statement every month, the numbers rose, slowly but steadily. He no longer had a dream of becoming rich, but a plan for becoming free. One day, a young employee at work asked him, "Michael, how come you're so relaxed? You don't seem stressed at all." Michael smiled and simply said, "Because I finally know where I stand." Financial freedom was no longer a goal for him, but a sense of direction. He didn't know how far he would go, but he now had a compass, his own financial reality. Real estate mindset: wealth is built brick by brick. In the pursuit of financial freedom, many people have the same question in mind: how can I get rich quickly? But this question is one of the biggest traps in the investment world. The truth is, real estate investing is not about getting rich quick. It's the art of patient growth.
Just like a building, wealth starts from the foundation, solid, measured, planned, and rises over time. Ken Mroy's story is living proof of this. Starting from scratch, with no financial backing, he built a portfolio worth billions of dollars over 25 years. But his secret wasn't luck or connections. It was mental discipline, patience, and financial strategy. Real estate was not just a source of income for him. It was a foundation for freedom. Most people misunderstand the concept of passive income. You think that when you buy a property and hand the keys to the tenant, the money will flow in on its own. But in reality, behind every passive income stream is an active system, proper analysis, regular maintenance, and financial control. A real estate investor is not just a property owner, they are a system builder. Wealth in real estate begins with cash flow, not market value appreciation. Cash flow is the pure income left after all expenses are deducted. It is the true measure of freedom, because this flow keeps you afloat even during economic storms. Markets can fall, interest rates can change, but a strong cash flow protects you. Real estate investment is also a game of patience. Ken Mroy's 10,000-unit portfolio wasn't built overnight. It was built with decades of discipline. He didn't fall for the allure of buy-sell opportunities. Instead, he focused on long-term rental income. This strategy shielded him from market fluctuations and opened the door to sustainable wealth. The most important awareness point for today's investors is this: real estate investment is a machine that works over time. If you don't manage it, it will manage you. Therefore, before investing, gain knowledge, understand market dynamics, follow demographic trends. Indicators such as population growth in a city, job opportunities, rental demand, and the proportion of elderly residents shape the map of future opportunities. Ken Mroy's residential investments for those over 55 are also the result of this foresight. Low turnover, stable rental income, and long-term value appreciation. Success in real estate belongs not to those who wait for the best time, but to those who make the best preparations. It's not capital, connections, or luck. Knowledge and analysis make the difference. And remember, real estate investment is not a sprint, it's a marathon. Ask yourself this question: where do I want to be in a year? If your answer is financial freedom, start by exploring a neighborhood in the city you're in today. Walk its streets, learn about rents, talk to people. Because financial freedom isn't far away. It's hidden in the opportunities right before your eyes. Every step you take on this journey is a brick, and every brick brings you closer not to money, but to freedom. Story: Michael's first brick. The Arizona sun, a scorching midday. Michael stood in front of an old apartment building. He held a crumpled notebook in his hand. Scribbled notes on it: cash flow, fixed interest, elderly population ratio 22%. A year ago, he didn't know any of these terms. Back then, he was just an ordinary guy working at a bank, living a monotonous life from 9 to 5. At the end of the month, he struggled to even see his salary. One day, he came across a talk by Ken Mroy on YouTube, and that sentence echoed in his mind. Wealth is when money works for you. That evening, Michael opened his notebook, and for the first time, he drew his own financial picture. He wrote down his debts. He wrote down his salary. He wrote down his expenses. Then he realized money was controlling his life, not the other way around. That day, he decided, I will become a real estate investor. But he had no capital, nor any connections, just a mind hungry for knowledge. He spent months researching. He learned real estate terms and explored neighborhoods.
One day, he saw a small two-bedroom house for sale in the suburbs of Phoenix, owned by an elderly woman. The paint was peeling, the roof was old, but the rental potential was high. Michael did the math. Income minus expenses minus mortgage payments.
Result, $230 net cash flow per month. It might have seemed small, but that number was his first step toward freedom. Getting a bank loan was difficult. Your income is insufficient, they said. But Michael didn't give up. He borrowed a small amount from his family. He shared the rest with an investor using the carried interest method. He renovated the house. He painted the walls. He drew up a new lease agreement. When the first rent payment arrived, he didn't touch that money. He simply wrote in his notebook, "This is the first salary my time has paid me." As the months passed, a steady stream of rental income began to flow in. Now, when he looked at his bank account, he didn't just see numbers. He was watching a system work. Cash flow was not just money to him, it was like breathing. He began researching a second property. This time, he found an opportunity in an age-restricted community. Low turnover rate, stable tenants, low maintenance costs, just as Ken Mroy had described. A year later, Michael passed by his old office, and he smiled. Inside, the same people were still glued to their computer screens, but he was building his own freedom, brick by brick. He had overcome his fears and turned his impatience into discipline. One evening he wrote in his journal, "I no longer aim to be rich, but to be free." At that moment, he understood that being a real estate investor was not just about acquiring property. Bricks, not just concrete, but vision. Cash flow, not just income, but freedom. And wealth, not just numbers, but the power to own your time. Michael had now set his new goal, to launch his own apartment complex project within 5 years. But he knew it was not just about acquiring property. Bricks, not just concrete, but vision. Cash flow, not just income, but freedom. And wealth, not just numbers, but the power to own your time. Michael had now set his new goal, to launch his own apartment complex project within 5 years. But he knew. Strategic planning, mapping wealth through real estate, financial freedom, is not a destination, but a journey. But every journey needs a map. Real estate investment is the game of those who draw that map, because wealth is not built by chance. Many people start real estate investing by looking for profitable opportunities. But the real question is, where will this investment take me? To financial freedom or just more stressful property? That's why strategic planning is the cornerstone of wealth. 1. Goal setting. Define your financial freedom number. Every investor should have a financial freedom number. That is, the amount of annual passive income needed to sustain the life you want to live. This number becomes your compass. For some, it might be $50,000 a month. For others, it might be $150,000. But remember, what matters isn't how much money you have. It's how hard your money works for you. Once this number is determined, the rest is about shaping the plan. How many properties, what type, in which region, over what time frame? Because strategy turns uncertainty into opportunity. 2. Recognize the types of capital: money, time, and knowledge. Many people think investing is only for those with money, but true investors learn to manage 3 types of capital: money, financial resources, cash, credit, investor funds; time, research, analysis, management; knowledge, the market, tax advantages, trends. Successful investors balance these 3, just like Ken Mroy's OPM approach, which stands for other people's money.
Combining other people's money with the right knowledge
reduces risk and increases returns. And remember, knowledge is the highest yielding asset. 3. Choose your model: rent, land, or short-term. There is no single right answer in real estate, but there are many wrong paths. Ask yourself this question: do I want quick profits or long-term freedom? Rental properties provide a steady cash flow. Commercial investments, high return potential, but risky. Short-term rentals require active management, but offer flexibility. Land development requires patience, but yields significant gains. Each model has its own language of time and risk. Which one is yours? 4. Roadmap. Start small, grow with discipline. Wealth isn't built overnight. It's built through the accumulation of planned steps. Your first goal should be just your first property. Then, optimize that property's cash flow. Add another one. Grow your portfolio. Each step brings you one brick closer to freedom. As Peter Saul said, financial freedom is a system. This system requires emotional balance, financial discipline, and patience. An investor without a plan is a captain without a course. The waves determine the direction, but the one who plans moves forward even in a storm. Stop today and ask yourself, do I want passive income or capital appreciation? Your answer will be the first line on your map. Set a small goal, because every goal eventually makes you the hero of your own wealth story. Story: Emily's Map. On a gray Seattle morning, Emily sat down by the window with her coffee. Outside, the rain fell like a thin curtain. She had an old notebook in her hand. On the cover was a sentence written in pen: "Financial freedom is not a dream, it's a matter of planning."
Emily was 35 years old. She worked as an accountant. She spent her life among spreadsheets. Her salary wasn't bad, but she had no freedom. 8 in the morning, 6 in the evening. The same routine, the same confinement every day. One day, she came across a Rich Dad, Poor Dad video on YouTube. And there, Ken Mroy said, "Money is a tool, but without a plan, that tool won't take you anywhere." At that moment, Emily stopped, and she realized she had no plan. She was just working, earning, spending, then going back to square one. The next day, she made a decision. She would draw her own financial map. She opened her notebook and wrote in capital letters, "Monthly freedom account equals $6,000. This number was a symbol of a debt-free, stress-free life for her. Now, there was only one question. How do I reach this number? Emily first analyzed the 3 assets she had. She had little money, but she had time. She devoted her weekends to research, listening to podcasts, and attending real estate seminars. Knowledge was now her new asset. Real estate investment caught her interest. But she didn't know which model to choose. Rental property? Short-term Airbnb? Or land investment? One evening, while listening to Ken Mroy on YouTube again, this sentence echoed in her ears. If you want a steady cash flow, start with small but sustainable rental properties. And right then she made her decision. She would take her first step. A small but strategic step. He found an old 2-bedroom apartment in the Tacoma area outside Seattle. The rental income was $1,200 and the expenses were $900. That meant a net cash flow of $300 per month. Small, but stable. Getting a loan was difficult.
His income was limited, but he prepared his application professionally. Cash flow statement, risk analysis, rental estimate, everything was detailed. When the loan was approved, his eyes filled with tears. This wasn't just an investment. It was a ticket to freedom. When he received his first rent payment, he didn't touch that money. He wrote just one sentence in his notebook. "This is the first fruit of my system." That same evening, he added the second step on a blank sheet of paper. Second property, within 2 years.
From that day on, he walked around the neighborhood every week. He noted opportunities. He eliminated some, put others on hold. He was no longer moving randomly, but consciously. Within a year, he had 2 rental apartments in his portfolio. His passive income had risen to $600. One day, his friend asked him, "Is it really worth all this effort?" Emily just smiled. "I'm not trying to get rich. I'm buying my time." 3 years later, she was still drinking her morning coffee by the same window. But even the sound of the rain was different now, because she had drawn her own wealth map. She had set her course and taken the wheel. She left a small note on the last page of that notebook. Wealth isn't luck. It's the result of your plan. Smart financing, the art of debt, credit, and leverage. There is one reality that everyone on the path to financial freedom must face at some point. Debt can either chain you down or set you free. The difference lies in how you use it. Most of society fears the word debt because they have been taught wrongly. Debt is not a threat. When managed consciously, it is leverage. Just as a lever arm can lift a large weight with a small force,
Properly used financing can open the door to large investments with a small amount of capital. Good debt, bad debt. The real difference lies here. Credit card debt, consumer loans, or debt taken on for increasing living expenses. These enslave you. But debt directed toward an asset that generates income and provides cash flow, that is the building block of wealth. True mastery. Managing debt. Financial mastery lies not in rejecting debt, but in putting it to work for the system. A real estate investor doesn't pay cash for every purchase because they use leverage. They turn bank money into rental income. And as long as this cycle continues, the debt starts working for them. But remember, when leverage is not set correctly, it increases risk rather than increasing profits. That's why you need to learn to dance with the numbers. Interest rate, amortization period, rent multiplier, cash flow. These are not just terms, they are the language of freedom. A simple equation. If a property's annual rental income exceeds the annual interest payment on the debt, that debt is working for you. But if the opposite is true, you are working for the debt. Financial freedom depends on which side of this equation you are on. Conscious leverage. Successful investors look at numbers dispassionately. For them, debt is not a risk, but a calculated opportunity. When action is combined with knowledge, debt becomes leverage. But when combined with ignorance, it becomes a chain. No great fortune ever started with cash savings. They were all built with smart financing plans. Credit is not an enemy. It is just a tool. But you must be in the driver's seat. Otherwise, the vehicle will drag you wherever it wants. A small exercise. Take a small step today. Get a loan example. Draw up a repayment plan.
Interest, installments, rental income, write it all down because numbers are not your enemy. They are your most honest guide. They are emotionless, but they always tell the truth. And eventually, you'll understand true financial freedom isn't about being debt-free. It's about having the awareness to manage debt. When you control the flow of money, no interest rate can limit you. That's when money becomes a lever, not a burden. Create a repayment plan for a loan example today. See the power of numbers. Story.
Rise with awareness, not debt. In the Sacramento suburbs of California, 34-year-old Ethan Miller sat on his knees staring at the papers covering the kitchen table. Letters from the bank, credit card statements, mortgage offers, they all seemed to say the same thing: debt will swallow you up. Ethan was a software developer. He earned well, but his money always seemed to disappear. Credit card debt, student loans, car payments, and one sentence kept spinning in his head: I want financial freedom, but how? Everyone said, get out of debt, but no one was saying, how can I manage my debt? One evening, while browsing YouTube, he came across a video by an investor. The man said calmly, confidently, debt won't sink you. Ignorance will. If debt generates income, it works for you. That night, Ethan opened his notebook for the first time, and he drew a table. Credit card debt, bad debt. Car loan, bad debt. Student loan, counts as an investment. Future real estate investment, good debt. That last line lit up in his mind like a light bulb. Instead of escaping debt, he was now thinking of using it as leverage. The following week, he found a small apartment.
He could get a low-interest loan from the bank. He did the math. Rental income, $1,200. Loan payment, taxes, insurance, $950. That meant a positive cash flow of $250 per month. A year passed. He set aside that $250 every month. And one day he realized debt was no longer a threat. It had become a partner generating income. In the second year, he bought another property, then a third. As the leverage grew, his fear diminished. One day, while having coffee with his old coworker Rachel, she asked, Ethan, while everyone else is running from debt, how is your portfolio growing? Ethan smiled. Because I'm not running from debt, I'm steering it. I learned how to make money work for me. Years passed. Ethan's total debt was over $1 million, but that debt was working for him. He paid off all his loans with rental income and used the remaining money to make new investments. Now, freedom for him meant not being in debt, but being in control. One evening, sitting on his balcony, he remembered his past self, the self who anxiously shuffled debt papers on his desk. Now, at the same desk, he was planning his investments. He wrote a small note on the first page of his notebook. Debt doesn't chain you. Ignorance does. And he added below, credit is not a risk. How you use it determines your fate. That night, Ethan realized true financial freedom lies not in being debt-free, but in wise debt management. Now, every new credit application was not a burden for him, but a step toward greater freedom. Sustainable wealth, time, patience, and psychology. Building wealth isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. Financial freedom isn't a goal. It's a set of habits. And just like a building's foundation, it rises slowly, brick by brick.
In real estate, or in any kind of investing, sustainable wealth is the reward of those who understand the true power of compound growth. Most people think compounding is just about interest rates. But in reality, true compounding happens through knowledge, experience, discipline, and emotional balance. Every smart decision strengthens the previous one. Every patient moment turns into growth. As Monish Pabrai says, time is the ally of the right strategy. An investor doesn't win every day, but with focus, without rushing, they learn to turn losses into lessons and lessons into opportunity. Ken Mroy built a $2 billion portfolio over 30 years, not by working harder, but by being more patient. When markets fluctuate, home prices drop, rents fall, interest rates rise, most people panic. But the true winners are those who don't surrender to emotion, because sustainable wealth is the financial reflection of mental stability. As Peter Adea once said, Financial freedom is the product of emotional intelligence. No matter how much the market changes, your inner balance should remain steady. Keeping wealth is harder than creating it, because money management is a technical skill, but wealth management is a psychological test. Impatience, envy, fear, and the craving for quick satisfaction, these don't just destroy fortunes, they destroy potential. In real estate, compound growth means this: rents reinvested, cash flow multiplied, small gains quietly expanding into a growing portfolio. Today's $500 in passive income could become tomorrow's new property, as long as you focus on long-term balance instead of short-term glitter.
Compounding doesn't just work with money. It works with habits. Tracking your income and expenses every month. Learning to read the market. Knowing when to wait. Each small habit builds the invisible momentum of wealth. For a true investor, the goal isn't more properties, it's more awareness. Because the ability to make the right decision at the right time usually comes from emotional silence. Short-term pleasure is the enemy of financial freedom. But one small disciplined step, taken every day, compounded with patience, can become a lifetime of freedom. So today, make a choice. Ignore the market noise, the ups and downs, the scary headlines, the panic. Stay loyal to your plan. Because true wealth doesn't begin on a chart. It begins in your mind. Choose one small habit today. Repeat it patiently. Because every great fortune is the fruit of a small discipline. Story: Jesse's quiet years. As the sun set over the dry hills of Arizona, Jesse Miller sat in his pickup truck, flipping through an old notebook. The pages were filled with notes from 10 years ago. First property, 84th Street. Rent, $850. Expenses, $720. Profit, $130. He was 27 back then, dreaming of fast wealth, luxury cars, and big houses. Now, at 37, he still drove the same truck, but he earned steady cash flow from 12 rental properties. The difference wasn't luck, it was mindset. Jesse's first investment had failed. In 2014, he bought an apartment complex, but after months without tenants, he gave up. Real estate isn't for me, he thought. That same year, by chance, he attended a seminar where Ken Mroy said, "Fast wealth is the enemy of patience. True profit compounds with time." That sentence burned into Jesse's mind. From that day forward, his goal changed, not to become rich, but to become consistent. First, he wrote down every loss in his notebook. Then, he started setting aside just $200 a month. 3 years later, he bought a small triplex. The rent was low, maintenance was high, but this time he stayed calm. He renovated slowly, built trust with tenants, and used every extra dollar to reduce debt. When the market shifted in 2019, many investors panicked. Rates changed, prices dropped, but Jesse stayed steady. Because he focused on cash flow, not hype. That $1,500 in monthly passive income became his shelter in the storm. One evening, his old friend Mike called. "How do you do it, Jesse? I've tried flipping 3 times, lost money every time." Jesse smiled, took a sip of his coffee, and said quietly, "I stopped running, Mike. Now I win by walking." Over time, Jesse's portfolio grew. By 2024, he owned 15 properties, but his discipline never changed. At the end of every year, he wrote the same line in his notebook: "Profit grows from patience, loss grows from haste." One day, his daughter Emily was asked at school, "What does your father do for a living?" She smiled and said, "He's a patient man." When Jesse heard that, he realized he had gained something far more valuable than money. Financial freedom for him was no longer measured by zeros in a bank account, but by peace in his heart. Now, when he watched news about market crashes, he simply smiled. His plan was solid. His income was compounding. Each small gain quietly evolved into new opportunities.
That night, he opened his notebook again and wrote, "Patience is stronger than interest." Jesse knew now, building wealth is like building a wall, brick by brick, year by year, quietly, steadily. Because the strongest structures are not tested by the wind, but by time. The freedom formula, making money a tool, not the goal. True financial freedom isn't about having more money, it's about having control over your time, energy, and values. Money itself isn't the goal, it's a tool, a bridge that helps you live life on your own terms. Real estate, investments, cash flow, compound growth, they all serve one purpose, to make you the architect of your own life. As Saul reminds us, financial freedom isn't about wealth, it's about choices. Just like in Ken Mroy's story, real estate doesn't just build income, it builds discipline. And as Monish Pabrai teaches, true profit lies in psychological balance. All of them point to one simple truth. To manage money is to manage life. Freedom isn't measured by how much money you make, but by the choices that money allows you to make. If you're still spending your days in a job you dislike, money hasn't freed you, it's only bought you a more expensive cage. True wealth is waking up every morning with the right to do what you truly want to do. That's why financial freedom isn't a number, it's a philosophy. A way of living built on 3 core pillars. Control. You manage your income, expenses, debt, and investments, not the market. Value alignment. You spend money in harmony with what you believe in. Time sovereignty. You own your time, the rarest resource of all. When these 3 come together, the freedom formula is complete.
Financial literacy isn't just about earning, it's about not wasting what you earn. And patience, like compound interest, makes you freer year after year. Because here's the truth. Real estate, stocks, or portfolios alone don't create freedom. Freedom is built through conscious decisions. Every investment you make, every habit you choose, every get-rich-quick scheme you turn down, it all moves you either closer to freedom or further from it. At the beginning of this journey, we made you a promise. Financial freedom begins with knowledge, but it's earned through action. Now it's time to act. Browse a real estate listing. Create a debt repayment plan. Open a budget sheet. But above all, take the wheel of your own life. Because success isn't about how much you earn, it's about how you live. And if you choose the right path, you'll no longer be a servant of money. You'll become the master of your life. Take action now, because financial freedom doesn't begin with thinking, it begins with doing. Story: The Owner of the Day. The warm morning sun of Arizona slowly brushed over the quiet streets of Santa Fe. Emma sat on her porch, rocking gently in her chair, sipping her coffee. It was 7:30 a.m., and without realizing it, she smiled. Because at that very hour, for years, she used to sit behind a desk, working to build someone else's dreams. Not anymore. 5 years earlier, Emma had been a financial advisor at a bank. Every morning, the same traffic, the same stress, the same meetings. Her salary was decent, her car was new, her closet full. But one day she realized something. I'm living for my money. My money isn't living for me. That realization changed everything.
One evening, while walking through Central Park, she was listening to a podcast. The host said, "Money is a tool, not a master." Those words echoed in her mind. That night, Emma decided to write her own freedom formula. Nothing was easy at first. Her first investment was a small rental apartment on the outskirts of New Mexico. The rent barely covered the mortgage payments. But that little apartment built more than income. It built a mindset. In her second year, she partnered on a student house. By the third year, she managed 2 properties herself, handled maintenance, tracked every expense, and recorded her cash flow like it was a journal of freedom. And one day, she cleared her desk for the last time. Emma was no longer someone who lived off passive income. She was someone who had bought her time back. It wasn't about how much she earned anymore, but how she lived. She took morning walks, had lunch with her sister, and volunteered at a local animal shelter in the evenings. One afternoon, her old coworker Mark sent her a message. "Emma, what did you do to look this peaceful? I'm still drowning in debt and stress, yet I make more money than you." Emma paused, smiled, and typed a short reply. "Because I made money the tool and life the goal." A few seconds later, Mark replied, "I get it." And in that moment, Emma knew maybe Mark was about to write his own formula too. That evening, she sat on her porch again, watching the sun melt into the horizon. As the birds returned to their nests, a quiet sense of gratitude filled her heart. Wealth isn't the number in your bank account. It's the power to choose where to drink your morning coffee.
The breeze brushed through her hair. Her eyes drifted toward the fading light. She no longer thought about the future with fear, but with freedom. Because she had achieved what once felt like a distant dream. To own her time. And in that moment, a thought crossed her mind, a truth she hoped others would one day feel too. Real wealth is being able to say, "I'm not working today," whenever you want. Freedom begins with you. When you reach the last page of a book, 2 things can happen. Either the story ends, or your story begins. These lines are not an ending, they're a beginning. Because this book was never just about real estate investing. Its purpose was to awaken something in you, your own potential. Financial freedom isn't about numbers. It's not about how much you earn, where you live, or how many properties you own. Real freedom is the power to choose how you spend your time. And that begins with mastering your financial awareness. On this journey, you've learned something powerful. Wealth is not a destination, it's a process. Real estate is not the goal, it's a tool. Debt is not the enemy, it's a force to be managed. And patience is the invisible architect of every game. Now you know freedom isn't something waiting out there. It's a discipline you build within. Every financial decision, every investment step, every morning you ask, "What can I do today?" All of it makes you a little more free. Many people spend years waiting for the perfect time. But the perfect time never comes. Because real transformation begins the moment you decide to start. So here, now, in this very line, make a decision. Don't just stay full of knowledge. Become someone who takes action.
Grab a piece of paper. Write down your net worth. Pick a neighborhood. Study its potential. Set a goal. Find your freedom number. Then take small, consistent steps. Because financial freedom isn't won through big leaps, but through steady progress. Remember, successful investors aren't different. They've simply learned to manage their thoughts and actions. They moved forward even when afraid. learned what they didn't know, and applied what they learned. You can do the same. Because this book was only a mirror of your potential. Now it's your turn. Write your own freedom formula. Tell your own financial story. And remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Patience, planning, and belief will take you there. One day you'll sit on your porch, coffee in hand, and say, "Yes, I made money the tool and life the goal." And when that day comes, remember, it all began here, in these very lines. This page is your 0 point. Now close the book and take action. Because financial freedom doesn't begin by thinking, it begins by doing.